everyone, I'm Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to do the Misty Meadow design for you today, which is a flat bracelet design, and it's about a 1/2 inch wide, so it's a little bit thinner than some wide bracelets, but a little bit thicker than your average single row. This is going to go up and down the project several times, so you'll be able to add your clasp closure right away. We're also going to be using 2 needles for this project. For the materials for the Misty Meadows, we're going to be using Cheops beads as our kind of focal bead, which if you're not familiar with the Cheops beads, the Cheops are 2-hole triangles, and we sell them in they're 6 millimeter, and we sell them in 9-gram tubes. And when you're looking at the Cheops, they have 2 holes going through, 1 on an end and then 2 coming out on either side of the point. We're going to be using that reference as we're working with it. If you need any of these materials that I'm listing, there are also links available on the left-hand side if you do need to purchase them online and can't get to one of our Potomac Bead Company locations. So you're going to be using a one color of Cheops. And then for the meadow part of our kind of peaks on the sides, we're going to be using some MiniDuos. So the MiniDuos are just like Super Duos, only shrunk. I'm using 2 colors of purple. I'm going to get a little bit more of a variety in here down the middle. I'm going to be using the Pastel Bordeaux color, which is a little bit darker than the Tanzanite color here in the 2 MiniDuos. So we're going to be using those. I'm also going to be using a crystal just to add a little bit of pop, and this is the metallic transparent purple color. It has just a little bit of that purple shimmer on the side. Closing it all off with a faceted cup button, and this color is the magic blue cup button. It looks really nice with the purple colors. And then we're going to be using an 11-0 to kind of separate and to connect here what look like my mountains to my meadows of the Misty Meadow. And I'm going to be using the DC Galvanized Pewter beads for my 11-0s. To put it all together, I'm using wildfire beading thread in 0.006, and I'm using a green color today. And then, like I said, we're going to be using 2 needles. I've switched out my normal pony brand needles, and I'm going to try this one here with our new tulip needle. So I have 2 tulip needles in a size 11 that I'm going to be working with. I also have handy my thread snips and my super new glue. And then always kind of right off to the side, I have my thread burner ready and handy to go. And this is the Thread Zap 2 that I'm working with. We are going to be working with all the beads right away except for our crystals. So the first thing we're going to do is make little piles, and you're going to put 2 needles on one piece of 5 feet of your beading thread. So to get started, again, I have my little piles, and then I have my 2 needles on a 5-foot piece of beading thread. And where we're actually going to start is right here at the start of our project. We're going to start by connecting our clasp closure to it. So I'm going to add my button at the start, and then we're going to work up the bracelet. You're going to notice that the Cheops, as we put them on, we're going down the center row. They're all going to be facing point down. That's important when you put them on. We're also going to be separating out with 11-0s between the Cheops and the MiniDuos. And the middle MiniDuo row, I'm going to be using a different color, and that's the Bordeaux color, versus the ones that are going to be closest to the Cheops. I'm going to make those the light Tanzanite color. So to get started, we are going to put our faceted button on. To do that, I'm going to add 3 of my Duracoat galvanized light pewter beads, and I added 3 of those on my right hand needle. I'm going to add my faceted cup button going through 1 hole coming out the back, and on a diagonal going through the other hole. So my holes aren't going to be side to side, they're going to be diagonal from one another. That's the direction that my needles are going to be coming out. I pull the thread down, and you can see those buttons, or the seed beads, are just going to decorate that button a little bit. When I get to the back of the button here, I'm going to add 3 of my 11-0 seed beads on each needle. Let those drop down next to my clasp, and now I'm going to start with my pattern. So I'll put the pattern kind of over here on the side for you to look at as I'm doing it. To start out, I'm going to pick up 2 of my MiniDuo beads, 1 on each needle, and those are going to be my lighter Tanzanite color. Then I'm going to pick up one of my Bordeaux MiniDuos, and I'm going to put 1 needle through one hole and one needle through the other hole. Separate out those needles again and put another of my tanzanite on each needle. So you have 5 of your your mini duos on right now. I'm going to force those all down next to my project. And you can see here they're going to sit with the outer holes, the empty holes towards the outside, and then that Bordeaux one collecting kind of in the middle. That's going to be the same pattern that we do the whole length of the bracelet. In between this pattern of 2, 1, 2, we're going to add an 11-0 on each needle, and then we're going to add a key up. Here's where I was saying that for the key up, you want to make sure that it is point down. So you can see here that the holes are right near the point. Here they're in the back of the project. I'm going to hold it so I make sure that each of my needles is going through so that the point is facing down. Let that drop down next to my mini duos. And then what I'm going to do is put on another seed bead on each side and continue on with that same pattern. So again, I'm going to put on an 11-0 on each side. So one on the right needle, one on the left. If you don't like using 2 needles at once, you can kind of just put one down to the side and then do one and then pick up the other. A tanzanite mini duo goes on each needle. And then the Bordeaux needle is going to, or the Bordeaux color is going to have both holes caught with the needles. Separate them out, add the tanzanite, add an 11-0, and then add another one of your key up beads. Again, point down, and one needle through each side. And again, this bracelet is not going to shrink up at all in its design, so you want to make this pretty true to fit. Once the end meets the button, you're going to stop with this first initial row of design, and we're going to make a loop for our button to fit inside. Then we'll come back down the project again and add our second row of our key ups and some more of our mini duos. So here I am done the length of the center of the bracelet, and what I'm going to do on this side now is to make the loop in order for my button to go through. When I try this on, just to show you fit wise, you can see that it touches the button in the back, and that's going to leave me enough extra room for my loop without it being too tight. So coming out the end here, just like if you finished one of your patterns with your 2, 1, 2, I'm actually going to add one more of my purple mini duo of that Bordeaux color, and I'm going to take it just like I was continuing or basically starting that pattern over. I'm going to take that and put that on. That's going to allow me a starting space in order to add my loop. So to make our loop, you're just going to take one of the needles, it doesn't matter if it's the right or the left, and you're going to add a bunch of your 11-0 seed beads. If you're doing a regular clasp closure that is metal of some sort, you do want to use some wire protectors. You'd put those on now. I use buttons a lot because I think they're really, really easy to put on and off. That's why we had them manufactured. Especially also for people with metal allergies, it takes that out of the equation. And you don't get done your project and have something that turns colors because it's not the metal that you thought it was, or vice versa. So once you have your loop and you make sure that it's big enough for your button to fit in, what you're going to do is take the needle end that has the beads on it, and you're going to stick it down that Bordeaux Super Duo and down the opposite side to make a loop. To reinforce that loop and to get my other needle in the correct place, I'm going to pick up the opposite needle and go right back through all of those seed beads. And that's going to put 2 pieces of beading thread in between, or in each bead. You can also reinforce it more times as we come back down the project again. Once you have this reinforced and you're back through all of these seed beads, same thing, you're going to go through that first MiniDuo, that Bordeaux, and come out right after it. Tighten up your threads. And you want to try to pull all the thread that's in your project out, and we're going to get ready now to add our next row to our Misty Meadows bracelet, which is going to be another addition of a super duo, as well as 2 more key ups down the sides. To start, I'm just going to work with 1 needle, so you can poke your needle to the left into your bead mat, and then you can flip over and work from it the other side. But you are going to need some more of your key up beads. And we're not yet into our crystals, so we're just doing piles of everything else but the crystals. We are done with our lighter color of our MiniDuos, so you can put those away if you would like to clean up your bead mat. I find it's easier to clean up my bead mat right away, or they sit on the bead mat for a while. Once I'm out the end here, what I want to do is I want to get started by adding a seed bead. When I add the seed bead, I'm going to go from the top hole, or from the last MiniDuo, to the second hole that's still free on the Tanzanite MiniDuo. So my 11-0 goes on, and 1 more, and I'm going to go and pick up the second hole of the Tanzanite MiniDuo that is already on. Give a nice little pull. And when I'm coming out here between those MiniDuos in that Tanzanite color, I'm going to add another one of my Bordeaux color. And so down into the next MiniDuo. That's going to start to add that line of the darker MiniDuos. When I'm coming out of the Tanzanite color, I'm going to put on one of my 11-0 seed beads, and then I'm going to pick up a key up. When I'm going this way now and sewing the opposite way, we were sewing that the point was facing downward basically, and we were sewing through the point. Because the needle's coming the opposite way, we're going to do the same thing, which in effect is going to reverse it. So I'm still going to sew through the top hole coming out the back end of my key up. Add another 11-0, and then I'm going to sew through my next Tanzanite bead and pull nice and tight. You can see that's going to sit the key up off-centered and basically facing the other direction. Once I'm between my Tanzanite beads, on goes my Bordeaux color MiniDuo, sew through another Tanzanite, add an 11-0, and add my next key up. Add another 11-0 after the key up, and sew through my next MiniDuo. I do this a couple times on one side, and then flip it over and do it the other side. That makes sure that you keep the tension similar on each side, rather than coming down and doing one whole side. So I'm going to do the same thing on this other side, adding 2 of my 11-0s and picking up that MiniDuo on the side, adding the Bordeaux MiniDuo, and then after I come out the Tanzanite, add the 11, key up through the point, and 11, and down to the next portion of my MiniDuos. We're going to repeat this same pattern the whole way along the bracelet. That'll get our last row of key ups in place here and decorate basically the middle with that other color of our MiniDuos. So I'm here at the end and I've added my last of my key up bead, and I'm just going to show you that I need to add my last of my little MiniDuo bead, and then your MiniDuos you can actually clean up because you're done with them. But basically all I've done was come down the whole sides, each one, adding my beads in place, and then I'm here ready to add my last of my MiniDuo, and I'm going to use this opportunity to reinforce my clasp then. I have my last bead that goes on, and I go through that first hole, or that second hole, I'm sorry, of my Tanzanite MiniDuo. When I'm coming out here, I want to add my 2 11-0 seed beads, and then I'm going to sew up through the 3 seed beads that lead up to the button, and then up through the button, if it wants to let me. Once I'm up through there, I'm going up through the button. If you can at the same time, you can pick up some of those seed beads there that we use to decorate. And that's going to make it easier to work with. And then I'm going to continue to sew through the other 2 and straight on down to the other side. Coming out here right after my seed beads. And then that needle is going to stay there. I'm going to do the same thing with my left hand needle. And you can see I'm just leaving 2 of the other holes of the faceted button open. If it really drives you nuts, you can put on 2 beads and then connect to the other holes. I'm just leaving it open. So I have my 2 of my 11-0s going on, and then I'm going to reinforce the button again. So the button's actually going to have 4 pieces of thread going through it. Coming down the other side then, and we're going to come out right after those 11-0 seed beads. And now that we have the 11-0s on the side, we're actually going to use those 2 11-0s on the side and bring our needle out there. So down through all 3 beads that are right before the button. And then once you're through those, you're going to go through on each side the outer 2 11-0s that you just added. So I'm going to go over to here, go through those 2 11-0s on this side, and my needle is going to come out the side. When it comes out the side here, 2 more 11-0s go on, and I'm going to sew through that Bordeaux MiniDuo. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Coming out those 3 beads that are leading up to the button, I'm going to sew out the 2 beads that we added, and then 2 more beads go on and through the Bordeaux bead. If you do happen to have a MiniDuo that has a hole closed like this from the coating, you can kind of usually just kind of poke it out with your needle, or you have a beading awl or a reamer, that works as well. Once you have those through, you're going to get ready to come down the side, and now we get to add the crystals. So we're out the sides here after our Bordeaux MiniDuo, and we get to add the crystals. So you're going to want to dump out the crystals, and it's either going to be a crystal or 3 seed beads that you're adding every time as we come down the sides. After the Bordeaux MiniDuo, we're going to be adding a crystal and then sewing through the key up. When you're coming out a key up, in order to connect to the MiniDuo underneath it, you're going to add 3 seed beads. Again, this is going to be the same on the right and the left. You're going to catch the last hole of the MiniDuo. Coming out the MiniDuo, add a crystal. Sew through the key up, and you're going to add 3 11-0s. And it's this really simple pattern the whole way down now, back towards the loop end of the clasp. We're going to do it at the right, and then we're going to do it on the left-hand side. So I've come down each side adding my crystals and my seed beads in place, and I'm here at the ends coming out of my last Bordeaux MiniDuo. What I'm going to do is repeat what I did on the previous side, adding 2 11-0 seed beads. I'm going to sew up the 2 as well as the extra Bordeaux bead and come out. Next, I'm going to reinforce my clasp. If you want to, you could do a peyote stitch as well. And I'm just going to reinforce the loop that's there. Keep it simple. Once you're done reinforcing and you're coming down the opposite side, what I'm going to do is just leave my needle set and rest there. And I'm going to get the other needle to come out and end right at that MiniDuo. So I'm coming through that Bordeaux MiniDuo with that same thread. On the other side, I'm going to pick up 2 11/0 seed beads, sew up the 2 that are on the side there, and bring my needle out. Now simply my thread are right next to one another. This is the great thing when you're working with 2 needles. That was a question recently of somebody on one of the bead forums. The great thing with 2 needles is you can end it really easily and you can add your clasp really easily. So when you have the 2 needles, all you do is tie a knot. If you don't like to glue or you want to reinforce a little bit more, you can sew your thread ends down further. I'm just going to knot here and do 3 knots. You can see I'm switching hands, right over left and then left over right. Instead, I'm just switching which hand I'm holding the thread in. Once you have that there, I have about an extra 1.5 feet of thread, but I like to have just a little bit extra. Also, I tend to have a smaller wrist, so you may want to make yours a little bit longer. I have 12 rows of my Cheops, just to let you know, so I used 36 of those, and I still have a fair amount more in my tube. It would look pretty with 2 colors mixed. I also thought about it after, and you could put a crystal in the middle, right in the middle section, instead of using your MiniDuo. I think that would look really pretty. So all I did was drop a little dab of my super new glue. I'm going to get my thread snips, my slip and snip cutters, trim that thread down, then I'm going to grab my burner, and my burner at the end I'm going to hold my button in, and I'm just going to burn those edges down. Once you have that and the glue dries, you are finished with your Misty Meadows bracelet. So it's a fun use of the Cheops, going one in each direction, and I just had to add some bling in there with the Potomac crystals. And when it's on your wrist, it's going to lay nice and flat, and with the button you're just going to stick it on and away it will go. So you get to play around with some of the new shapes, those Cheops shapes, as well as the MiniDuos. I haven't done a ton with the MiniDuos, but I will be doing more because we just got a lot of colors in, and they just give a daintier look than the Super Duos. So if you get a chance, pick up some of these materials. You can go to PotomacBeads.com, check out our locations page, and go to one of our stores and pick some up. If you can't get to one of our stores, you can shop online with us there. And if you need any list of the materials or any links to any of the materials to purchase online, you can go right underneath the video here to the details page. If you hit the little show more button, it'll bring you up to the links to get these specific materials if you're interested in these. Also, if you like us on Facebook and subscribe to the channel here, you'll get regular updates when we do product updates, when we get new beads in, when we do new classes, and you get to see a lot of great designs. So thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and have fun making the Misty Meadows bracelet.